One other thing you mentioned in your book is the importance of not just articulating values, but actually working to bring them to life in culture.
Mhm.
And I think you even shared, I can't remember if it was our previous conversation or in the book, but like even evaluating whether those values are operationalized. And
Yeah.
so we'd just love to hear your thoughts on just broadly, how have you, where have you, what have you done to successfully bring values to life in the companies you've led?
Yeah, there've been 3 key, priorities, all of which starts with articulating a set of organizational values that are important to me, but also important to the larger team. But once those are defined, there's a danger that if you don't try to operationalize them, they end up being just rhetoric. You put them up on a wall and people don't think that they actually mean anything. So the first piece is having those values be a key part of the hiring process.
Hmm.
You're looking for somebody in the sales function or the marketing function or engineering function, and not just focusing on the people's backgrounds or how good they are in a substantive way, but also how well they align with the company values. And if they don't align well with the company values, you actually don't hire them. That's the
Mhm.
first. The second is in the review process, employee review process. In a similar vein, you don't just look at the substantive job they did, but you look at how well they functioned in alignment with the values you've articulated. And if, for example, they have done a good job in many ways, but they're kind of toxic, then they don't have such a great performance review. But you tie it back very specifically to the values, as opposed to it being kind of more general than that. And then the
Mhm.
third very critical piece is that you survey the organization frequently, so typically on a quarterly basis, as to how well the company, in the view of the employees, is exemplifying the values or not.
Mm.
And then you report out on that to the entire company. And you say,
Yeah.
This is the area where people feel we're doing well. This is the area where people feel we're not doing well. And here's the action plan to address the things that we're not doing as well." And
Yeah.
over time, over the quarters, over the years, you see this really interesting ebb and flow in terms of how well the company is doing or not doing with respect to values. And you'll see things strengthen and you'll see things weaken, but you have a very good sense of where you are relative to the cultural
Mhm.
framework that you've defined. And
Mm.
it's not an ad hoc process the way I think it is in most companies.
Yeah. Do you have any stories on, when some of those results came back and you saw a value that wasn't, where you hoped it would be in the opinion of the employees to how you responded or something that you did that helped work to activate it a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, a good example in a couple of companies that I've run, there's been two different values that are intentionally in tension with one another. One of them being relentless velocity, and
Mm.
another being analytical rigor. And
Mm.
so
Mm.
they're inherently in conflict because if you go really fast, you don't have time to analyze. And if you analyze a lot, you often don't go fast. But I
Right.
think great companies often find a really good balance between the two, and which
Mhm.
is the reason why I think it's an interesting, they're interesting from a values perspective. So yeah, I've been in situations in the companies where the prevailing view is that the company is moving too slowly or moving too fast,
Yeah.
and then you have to figure out, well, why is that, and you have to deconstruct it and survey people on the team and figure out if there's maybe excessive bureaucracy is slowing things down or a reluctance to take risk,
Mm.
and you have to try to address it, and then you come back again the next quarter and see if people think you've done a good job of that or not. So it
Yeah.
ends up being very dynamic because you're trying to manage it in an explicit and very action oriented way. Of course, these things aren't easy to change because often people's personalities and group personalities are fairly hardwired.
Mhm.
But I think you have a better chance of adapting if you're talking about it and if you're making it explicit as opposed to just sort of observing it and letting it happen.